Hello. Sorry for the delayed start. We're having some technical difficulties. So call in if it's just absolutely crap. Yeah, we're going to talk about another craft book today. We're going to talk about Story Genius, and I have with me the effortless, amazing Legend Star icon, Steve Tries. Do you want to introduce yourself? Where can people find you? What you do? Who are you?
You can find me on my channel, which I have recently started posting again on because Nano was happening and I was motivated to get content in. I mostly write and read anything to do with magic and murder, and yeah, that's pretty much it. That's me. And every now and then I tag along on these streams to talk about craft books.
And I'm so delighted you will. We'll say hello to some people. We have mom with us, Samantha, Semi, welcome. We have Lisa. Hi, all. Are you going to be sprinting today? We will be sprinting. Um, Also, Cool Gamer. Hello, hello, hello. We got two emojis from Violet, so I feel blessed. Yeah, today's topic is Story Genius. Oop, can you see it? There you go. By Lisa Cron. I have some very varied opinions about this. I don't know about you, Mullen, but
I have I want to say a range of opinions about this. There was some stuff that I found useful and vaguely interesting, and then some other stuff that I just did not work out for me. Let's say.
okay. Yeah, the structure today is that I just want to talk a little bit about the book, what it is, and who wrote it. And then we're going to do some sprints, and then in between each sprint, we'll talk about each part of the book. So that's the structural plan for the day. The book is divided into three parts, so that's four sprints in totals, which fits me well. Yeah, that's the plan for today. Um, I just want to say a little bit about what Story Genius is, and it is a crafting book written by Lisa Cron, author of Wired for Story, and she is a writer, but also she does seminars, I think, for other writers and kind of coaching and stuff like that. It's a crafting book on writing, and it is divided into three parts. Let's see here. Three parts that we're going to discuss. I have some opinions on all of them. And then, as a closing statement, we will talk about. Well, I have some questions prepared. We will talk about, like, do we use this book? Do we find it valuable? Do we recommend it? That's maybe the big one. And also a little bit about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So that's the plan for today. But I think we're just gonna jump into a sprint and hope that the internet issues resolve themselves within those 20-25 minutes. And then we'll be back.
Yes,
My name is Stig.
if
Oh,
I was just gonna say, if anyone in the chat could comment on whether I'm having delays or Stieg is having delays, because I can't. I'm hearing Stieg very delayed in the sound, and I just need to know if it's my issue and I need to like restart my internet or something, or I don't know, tell my husband to stop playing some live game. I don't know what it is. So just if you guys can call in, let us know.
there's a little pause for me before you answer, but it's nothing excruciating that I can't, stomach or weather. Yeah,
Okay, so Anna
Stig
seems
is
to say
fine.
it's me.
You
I
seemed
might
delayed to me,
restart my
Mullen.
router during the first sprint.
Yeah, maybe so. What will I just want to touch base quickly about Nano that we both did, and then also about your plans for December in terms of writing.
Sorry, what
Uh,
my plans are? I'm telling you, I can barely hear anything. It's really bad.
yeah,
It must be
we're gonna
me.
just go into a sprint and then hope it resolves itself. So we're gonna do that. Let's see,
Okay.
present, share screen, and this beautiful tarot timer by the Hexed Hourglass, one of my faves. Yeah, just we're not going to do an hour. How does 25 minutes sound? Let's see if we can. Or maybe I am the problem. Oh, there you go. Yeah, 25-minute sprint. Go, ghouls, go.
Oh my god, it's so much better. I was waiting for to see.
Oh, I'm so happy.
Oh, I'm so glad. I think it was literally just restarting the router for some reason, but yeah, that was
It'd be
fine.
like that sometimes, Malin. It'd be like that sometimes.
Yeah, maybe it's
What?
because I restarted my laptop right before the stream. I don't know.
Okay. So, what did you get done for that stream other than resetting your router?
I continued writing a little bit in my nano project, Knights of Death. So I wrote like 330 words. I'm not gonna lie, I don't think that I could even try to reach the speeds I was working at in November. But
I
I'm
mean,
not,
you were working at a Spice Queen level, like
I, I don't even know.
mother. What was it? Mother spaceship, spaceship
Yeah,
mother,
spaceship, yeah, mothership.
mothership. So that is some
Um,
pretty impressive stuff.
I can't do it anymore. Like even though I've sometimes sat down and been like, let me like try to get some words in, I'm much slower and I'm noticing the difference. So I think my body's like, you're done, girly. It's over. You can
I
stop.
mean, you absolutely crushed it though. So fair enough to your body. Fair enough to your
Yeah.
body.
But it's still I'm still willing to work on it. So that's the good thing is I don't feel burnt out completely. I don't feel like I have to completely stop and take a full on break. But I'm gonna try and continue this month and maybe do more like some research and stuff where I need to, and continue in January mostly during January Mo because that'd be a good one to write spice in, since Bangarimo.
Since Bangarimo.
Exactly. How
Yeah.
about you?
And for that sprint, I did a bunch of try to set up the next month of sprints on my channel. I did the Troublemaker thumbnail for Wednesday because I'm hosting.
Nice.
Um, yeah, she's not one for the books, but she's there. Um, and then what more? I didn't do anything else. I think.
Wait, does that mean that it's the tarot stream on Wednesday? Ooh,
Sure
okay,
does. Sure does. Get your last vibes of the year checked.
nice.
Hmm. So yeah, I before the sprint, I asked how you did for Nano and like what your plans for December was, but you kind of just answered that already.
Yeah, I couldn't
So
really
yeah,
hear you either, so I'm glad that I I'm glad that I waited for the first sprint to restart everything, and now it's fine. It's working.
I am relieved. So yeah, we had some new people join. We had Kelly join. Hello, hello. We had Zainab. Anna just realized that to schedule a work meeting at the top of the hour, and how dare I?
Yeah,
It's on you,
cancel
Anna,
it.
babes. It's on you, babes.
Cancel it.
And then there was some screen testing. Some relieved that he got fixed. Wendy says, "Oh, I'm late, but still good timing." A Wendy or a mystery is never late or early.
And also, we barely spoke before the sprint because of my internet, so you didn't
Yeah.
miss much.
Did some art stuff, says Kelly, and it's coming along. And it did, because I got a little sneak peek, and it was a lot of fun. Violet did the dishes, big slay.
Yeah.
I'm doing the clerical side of job hunting filtering. It
Okay.
makes sense you can't do it anymore. That adrenaline can only carry you so far, Malin. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And Zainab says, I'm studying for a government final using this SG discussion as my breaks in between. I'm
Nice.
so sorry that we're your entertainment. I'm ready for the tarot stream. Loved a good vibe check. Yeah,
Same.
what's that meme? Sometimes good, sometimes bad.
That's literally how it goes.
Yeah. And speaking of something good, and sometimes bad, Story Genius. Let's get into it. I have prepared a few things that I want to talk about,
Ooh.
uh, but
Okay.
I do want to just kind of have an open discussion before we like settle any subjects and stuff in case we touch on something. And the first part was basically what is a story and what isn't a story, and how did this resonate with you, Malin?
Um. So I feel like when I first read it, because I don't know whether I mentioned this, but I first started to read it a little while ago, and then sort of I think I was trying to fill it in. You suggested like maybe we can show how we're filling it in because it has like questions at the end of each chapter. And
It has
whenever I
like
was
an integrated workbook situation.
yeah, I will say that the first part of the book that makes you reflect a little bit more about how stories are made and the brain thinking behind making a story and what a story is. I found it vaguely interesting enough to read it twice and be okay with that. Like,
Okay.
it didn't completely push me away. I was like, okay, I like having someone else's opinion on it and just seeing how they would describe storytelling and what they think is right about storytelling. What I don't like, and it sort of touches upon the tone of the book overall, is how prescriptive it felt and how it was very much like, that's what a story is, and I'm right, you're wrong. Like it felt a bit like that.
That's one of my main complaints too, and one of the things I had kind of prepared. And let's just dig into it.
Yeah,
Um,
sorry, I didn't mean to jump up, but
No, 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 don't jump any. Like this is a discussion, and discussions go back and forth, and that's the fun part. I don't know if it can pose up on the screen, but the subtitle
mm.
is "How to Use Brain Science to Go Beyond Outlining and Write a Riveting Novel Before You Waste 3 years Writing 377 pages that
And
go
I
nowhere."
I don't know where the brain science was. Do you know where the brain
Yeah,
science was?
I'm gonna dip into that too because I have opinions on that. But the first one is the book says to go beyond outlining, and that's
Mm,
just the book is just a way of outlining. She
yeah.
doesn't go beyond anything. And the
Yes.
brain science, I think she has like what, a handful of mentions of maybe.
And the specific example that she uses, although it's a catchy title, so I get it, it's probably marketing more than herself, calling it "Before You Waste 3 years Writing 327 Pages That Go Nowhere." Um, it it might sound catchy, and I think it works in some cases. Like all of those articles you get that are like 10 things you didn't know or 10 things you're doing wrong. And I never click on those, but I know it works because I keep seeing them. So it must work on some people, right? So I feel like it's pure marketing. But if you go beyond the marketing and just the sentence itself, I was like, but how is that wasted? How is that It's never wasted. You can move your
Yeah,
story forward however you want to.
but it's just like because this makes it sound like she's using science to like
Yeah,
fix the problems.
agreed.
And I wrote down like a couple of the statements that she makes in this first part, and she talks a lot about brain science says brain we evolved to biologically we're wired, she says in the beginning when she explains story. And there's no citing, there's no like science behind it, there's
Yeah.
no brain, it's just like
There's no science beyond those two passages or something. Like at least I don't remember seeing it anywhere else that she was mentioning brain science again.
yeah. And it's just like it feels very a throwaway, and maybe I put too much emphasis on it, but that's like the big selling point of the novel. I felt like she was like,
Yeah.
This is a scientific way to write a book." And as you
And
say, it's very like prescriptive. She's very much like
yeah.
all the other things are wrong. Plotting, wrong. Not plotting, also wrong. Um, Having a bad first draft, wrong. And I'm like, bestie,
It's
like,
the way she formulates it feels very much like, here's me shit talking every other method you've ever used because they're all wrong. And it's like, when
yeah,
I read Save the Cat, there were things I disagreed with, but I never felt at any point like she was saying you have to do it this one way and one way only. Like, not to compare, but it's literally the other book that we read together.
yeah.
And
And I get it.
yeah, it's just you can easily say, if other methods have not worked for you, try this one. This might be the one that works for you and that is right for you. But you can't say all other methods are just wrong for everyone.
Yeah. And I just, because she spends a lot of time talking about, what did she call it? Myths galore. Everything we were taught about writing is wrong. And it's just, I don't know. It feels very much like you said, she's shitting on other like methods of
Yeah.
writing just to like forefront this one. And this is just a different way of outlining. It
I
doesn't
have
go beyond
another
anything.
I don't know how much jumping I'm doing in whatever you've prepared, but I have another thought literally linked to the whole like she's shit talking other methods. And
Dive into it.
what bothers me so much, and I wrote them down as well. I was checking page numbers and stuff because I reread yesterday my tabs because I put tabs at first and I hadn't written anything, and I was like, okay, so at some point she literally goes, she shit talks, index cards type of models, the ones where you make index cards and move them around, and then she tells you how to do index cards. At some point,
Literally.
he literally shit talks all the models that are very Save the Cat hero's journey based. And then she dives into what? The hero's misbelief, which is what? The main fucking point of the Save the Cat method.
Yeah, it's just where I feel like Jessica Brody very much is like, this is how I do it. This is how I found success. This is like, this is what I have to offer. I feel like
Jessica
Lisa
Brody
Cron is
herself,
very
I
much,
think, in her methods says like, I don't even know that this is how those people wrote their book, but this is how I analyze their books. She doesn't
yeah,
even say this is how they did it. She doesn't claim anything.
yeah, and I feel like whereas Lisa Cron very much sensationalizes like the topics, and I
Yeah.
guess it's just marketing.
Yeah.
Um, but it rubbed me the wrong way, and that's like my main gripe with the book is how it shits on everything you already know, just to be like,
Yeah.
you're dumb, you know nothing. Let
Which
me pull
she
you
could
in and tell you.
easily she could easily have done just marketed it a different way, because honestly there are some stuff in this book that I'm like, that's really useful. And if anything, when I read Story Genius versus Save the Cat, I felt like Story Genius was more like trying to understand yourself as a writer and what you like writing about in order to figure out what stories work best for you in a more character based way, while Save the Cat is more like plot based and stuff you find fun, and it doesn't actually dive into the whole analyze yourself and what you really want to talk about. So I feel like that should have been its marketing point and what it does different and better.
Literally, I 100% agree, and that, yeah, I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way, and
Yeah.
'cause as someone who's like a huge fan of Save the Cat and like the beat sheet method and all that jazz, I don't know. I felt like she was kind of shitting on her friend. Not that Jessica Brody knows me or anything, but I was just like, I like this thing. And then the result is that I start questioning myself as a writer. I'm like, okay, maybe I do know nothing. Maybe I am dumb. Maybe I shouldn't write a book. And
But
that's
no,
like
no,
literally
because
the opposite point of a craft book. I
yeah,
would think. Yeah.
yeah. And as craft books go, it doesn't have like, it has a lot of blah blah in it that is not craft and that is very repetitive as well. While I think I just prefer, if I'm being sold a craft book, I just want to read the craft itself and like how to do things and maybe an example. And I would say I did mostly enjoy reading the examples of her friend who's writing the book at the same time thing.
I did enjoy that. That was like a fun
It was
aspect, and
useful.
I think that's kind of what she should have stuck to instead of
Yeah.
like, because the other examples she uses are very dated. Like
Yeah.
Romeo and Juliet is one she
And I
uses
did
in the
check, I
beginning of the
think
book.
this version of the book, at least I have, says 2016.
Oh, maybe this is dated then. I mean, yeah, 2016 Lisa Cron, it says in
This
mine.
is when she wrote it, right? Like, it doesn't say that this is a second edition or anything.
Mine says first edition at the bottom
Yeah.
page. So
So
yeah,
2016 is
2016.
not that old that you need to only use really old examples, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, let's see. Violet does like the cover. It does follow the trend of having a red cover for a writing book or red
Yeah.
on the cover. So that's definitely something they did right. I agree with Malin. Violet says if it should have been marketed as how to write character-driven stories,
Yeah.
100% agree. Lisa agrees. She was a bit aggressive, but still found a lot of what she said useful, and we're going to dive into that in a bit. I just want to get all the negativity out of the way so we can circle back to it later.
Oh, wait,
Um,
do I need to get all of the negative stuff out of the way or
No,
just
no,
some?
no, 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 no. We're talking about part one now mainly, which is
Okay.
the character stuff, because she kind of divides it up in the
The
what is the
who.
story, and then the
Yeah.
character stuff, and then like the plot stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so yeah, that's one of the things I like found very off-putting when I read it was how aggressive she was putting down
Yeah.
everything else basically, and then she's just reframing the exact same advice that everyone else gives.
Oh, and the other thing, which is still in the first part, sorry, I'm just checking my page numbers, is also, it kind of goes hand to hand with how she's shit talking other methods, but also just her basically saying, don't ever pants, and pantsing is bad. And she repeats that several times as well. And it pissed me off so much because that's a valid method that we know for a fact so many writers use because of the fact that there's a big division, and you end up on a spectrum, right? Like, not everyone, you're not always like on one side or the other side, but pantsing is legit something that loads of writers use and are successful with. So I hated how much she should talk about.
Yeah, and I mean, she also shit talks planning, like plotting. She doesn't like that, and she doesn't like bad first drafts, which is one of
Yeah.
the topics I kind of got stuck on. Not stuck on, but I was like, ugh, this just rubs me
It's
the wrong
it
way.
felt like she misunderstood what people do when they do a zero draft and are mostly pantser. And someone else had explained this in a video, and I can't remember who it was. Maybe what's her name? Brockner? No, like that.
Erin Brockner.
Yes, I think. I'm not sure. Someone have basically done a video about like the different methods and everything. And I just remember them being like, a zero draft is very much like an outline. There's no huge difference. It's just that you're writing full on sentences and it's messy and it's telling you the story for the first time to yourself, while an outline might do the same thing in bullet point format or in a more constricted manner. But at the end of the day, it's the first time you lay the story down. And then you have a first draft, whether you started with an outline or a zero draft.
Yeah, and I'd argue that like her method of outlining even is like a zero draft because you're
Yeah.
writing down all this like, I mean, you can do it however you want, she says, but you're writing down all this character stuff and all this kind of motivation stuff and stuff you really kind of just discover as discover write a draft.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know, it just rubbed me the wrong way, particularly because of how off-putting she like kind of phrases it, but also as someone who kind of has shitty first drafts. Uh, I don't know. It maybe it just hit
Yeah.
a nerve. I don't know.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. But it's also all in the tone, isn't it? Because Save the Cat, I first read, before I read the Jessica Brody version, I had read the, is it Snyder? Something like that? Whatever his name is. The guy
yeah, Blake
who wrote,
Snyder.
yeah, and his tone is very similar to Lisa Cron's. It's very prescriptive and very, you're doing it wrong, and this is how you should be doing it, and this is the one and only method. And it rubbed me the wrong way as well. So initially, I completely hated Save the Cat, and then I read Jessica Brody's version. And I was like, right, so the tone matters.
Yeah, and it's as you say, she's like, um, she says that you shouldn't pants a story. You should outline, but you shouldn't outline. You should do her outlining.
Yeah,
So I'm just like, what's it gonna be? Like, you can't say you shouldn't outline and then you should outline. And then she says, your first draft shouldn't be shitty, but it's gonna be shitty. And that's
yeah,
one of the other things that confused me. I was
it's
just
a
like,
lot of contradictory bits. Yeah,
yeah. So that's one of my gripes. But I will say that there was some points she said had that shaping a shitty story is useless because there's nothing to shape, which I kind of agree on. But I don't know a lot of writers who write like story storyless first
mm,
drafts that I've read, at least, if that makes sense. Because she
yeah,
talks a lot about how the first draft, the plot isn't really relevant. It's kind of the story that's relevant. So the inner workings of your character. She talks a lot about a concept called the third rail that I want to kind of dip into later. But yeah, I just was very confused or by her contradictory statements and also very
yeah.
put off by the tone.
And I feel like maybe there's a way to make it make sense, but it's not very well explained then, and it just didn't hit the points that it was trying to make. I think because of all the
Yeah.
contradictions. Yeah,
I agree. And also, she states in this is all the way in the beginning that what was that? Like, no one talks about story. All everyone ever talks about is plot. And then just hold on. Nope.
it's the moment you said nope.
Oh, there you go.
There was like yes, actually.
In the beginning, she talks about I'm just referring to the notes here. She says that no one says story matters, and that's like literally all I hear from author tubes ever since I joined a couple of years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago. It's like, you can be a bad writer and you can have like crappy characters, but if your story is good, it will sell. And she even
Yeah.
brings up a few of those points, like of like poorly crafted craft, but good stories.
Mm.
And then I think she mentioned 50 Shades as one of the
Oh yeah, I
one of the
think so. Yeah.
examples. So I kind of agree with that. That you have to have like a pile of turds with glitter on is still a pile of turds. So you have to
Yeah.
have something in your first draft. So I agree on that. On that, just to find something. Uh, just to find something agreeable with the first part. Zainab
Um,
says, I agree, her stating how you have to outline is what pissed me off the most. And then Sam says, I say like the exact opposite. Which statement was that, Sam? We also had a Phoebe join. A PB.
the
Hello.
baby.
A PB. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're talking about the first part of Story Genius. So yeah, that's kind of my takeaway from the first
Yeah.
part.
I don't think I didn't divide it in my notes by part. So where does the first part stop again? Do you have the
The page number,
yeah
is that what you need? 144, was that it?
134 44?
144, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I did have some good notes about some of the stuff. I was like, that's useful, but it was mostly me trying to figure out if I could do the homework. The parts where she goes what to do, and I did enjoy all the parts where she's trying to break down what your point is as a writer, why you want to write that story, and trying to make you work through that. When I first did it the first time around, I thought it was really useful, and I will give her that, because I think that's probably something that changed the way I write as well, is realizing, all talks about like themes. When you plunge into like Save the Cat and all other methods, there's often that talk about themes, and I never quite grasped it until I read Story Genius. And then I felt like, okay, my theme can be something that comes from me and why I want to write these stories. And very often, all of my stories, I realized, followed a similar pattern, and they were all about a character not fitting in and learning to make the world fit to them, or getting to a new world that actually fits them better. So very often magical elements of it. But yeah, it was always sort of that pattern. And that was interesting to find out about myself as a writer as well. So we'll give her that. That was a positive.
Yeah, and I kind of liked the formatting she had done, where she had like the different steps. Oh, does it
Yeah.
show up? Yeah, different steps, and then
Yeah.
at the end of each step, she throws in a like what to do. So like basically homework for the part you just read. So I like that because Jessica Brody also did that for Save the Cat, where she has like checkpoints at the back of each chapter to like
Yeah.
how you can implement this into your own work. So as any good craft book, at least Lisa Cron did that. And I really enjoyed it. And I thought we could talk about it because I know we both did some notes in the beginning. I
Yeah.
stopped doing notes for the second half of the book because like this ain't working. But I want to talk about what she calls the very first glimmer. Um, and you said you didn't prepare your nano story. That was something else you had prepared, right?
Yeah, initially I thought I was gonna write something else for Nano, and I was like, I'm gonna try to use Story Genius for it, and then the Nano story just happened completely by pure chance, where I was suddenly like, I need to write this outline, and I wrote it in one night, pretty
Yeah.
much. But
And
yeah,
this is where she kind of takes you through the steps and talks about like who is your character, what is their past. She mentions that no story starts on day one, which I kind of agree with.
yeah.
And then she also
Yeah,
talks about
I liked all of the stuff that was about trying to figure out your character's origin story. And even when I wasn't doing it for myself, it made me think about some past stories I had written, being like, oh, maybe it could help with some side characters that I felt were maybe flatter than my main character. So that part I liked for sure.
yeah. So I just want to talk about the very first glimmer for the story you have. She calls it a glimmer, which is the first time you think of a concept or a story where you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
want to write this, and kind of what was that, what is happening, and kind of what were you feeling in that moment. And do you want to start sharing like your first glimmer or
Yeah, it's super brief. I wrote like literally one sentence. Um, and I'm pretty sure my first pinprick probably came from watching um, TV shows, because I was rewatching a bunch of TV shows at the time. And all of my stories are very supernatural, paranormal romance, or things like that. And very often I might be watching Buffy or the Vampire Diaries or whatever else there is that sort of follows that pattern, like Sabrina, all of these shows. So my first pinprick, I just wrote that I kept thinking about a woman who is, by all accounts, quite normal, seemingly, and befriends a 1,000-year-old powerful vampire. And I did want it to turn the friendship into love, but in a very, very slow burn type of way. So that was my very first pinprick for that story I didn't work on, but maybe I will at some point one day.
somebody? What was the pinprick for Knights of Death? Can I ask?
I never wrote it, but I think when I first started writing it, it was because I was reading a bunch of reverse harem romances, and I was like, there's a part that I'm enjoying, but it's a lot of trash, and I could do that better. And that was the first pinprick.
That's the basis of any good novel you write. Like, I like this, but I could do it better.
It's not even like do it better in a judgmental way. It's sort of like I could do it better for me as a reader. Like I know what I want to read, and this just isn't it exactly, and it's missing something. So I kept thinking about those type of things, and I was like, I need to do this myself.
Yeah. That was yeah, that was one of the fun things. Lynn asks, "Did you guys do all of the what to do prompts?" I did the first like chapter, and then I just fell off the wagon.
I think I
Uh,
did it up until really barely did any. For this one, I just did all of the what if chapter. So it's like chapter 3 or something. I don't know
yeah,
in
something
there.
like that.
And I have a more evolved one that I did for longer when I first read the book, but it's also a story I haven't written yet, and that I was starting to think of. And it's completely different again. So yeah,
Zainab chimes in with a I agree, Malin. Once I found a theme that really mattered to me, that's what really kept me going, even when writing got hard. That's fair. And then Sam said, "You can have a shit story, but if the characters are interesting, readers can ignore it. But of course, this means there is an audience for shitty characters and interesting story." Yeah.
yeah.
And Violet says, "Yeah, at least one or the other." In relation to Sam's comment, Phoebe says, "I don't think I've ever done every single exercise in a craft book." That's fair. That's fair.
I don't think so either. Have you done all the exercise in like Save the Cat or something?
I think I did for the first Save the Cat novel, not the YA one, but the first one. I think I did like every single exercise for my space opera that I never
Nice.
wrote, but it's there.
You could one day pick it up and be like, now I've got all of this ready.
Well, between you and me, I'm thinking about writing it after I'm done with Black Smoke Rising because I just keep thinking about the characters now, and it's been like what 2 years or something,
Oh, that'd be
and it's just
fantastic.
like it's such a fun world, and I loved it, and I thought the concept was really like interesting. So,
Yeah,
who knows? Maybe the work I did back
it'd be
four
quite
years
fun.
ago, like pre-pandemic era, will be worth it one day. Who knows?
What about
Let's.
your first glimmer then? Did you do it for your nano project or?
I did all my exercises for my nano project because I was trying to figure out my nano project. So this was really interesting. But my first pinprick was that I was watching a YouTuber who does like dioramas, so like little boxes of scenes. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Like you know what a diorama is?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he does a bunch of different dioramas, but one series that I really love is he does a Wild West diorama series where he's building a town, and like each diorama fits in with the lore of the town. And he's doing like a monster slash steampunk esque version of cowboys, and I was like, this is really fun. I wonder like why are the monsters here? Like who lives here in this town? And that
That's
was a
so cool.
spark of my own story. Uh, and I think I even left a comment like 2 years ago or something when I first had the idea, like,
Yeah.
oh, this is making me want to write a story about a cowboy in this town. And here
You
I
can
am writing a
usually
story.
screenshot that and be like, this is it. This was the first glimmer.
Yeah, you can look up old comments, I think. Yeah, so I can probably find it again. But yeah, that kind of just what inspired me. Just like watching him, because I don't know, there's something very therapeutic about watching someone build like a diorama. It's just very soothing to me. Uh, and then, that was the that was the birth of my Wild West story. So that's fun.
I like that.
Violet says, "Gosh, part of me wishes I would have done a reread of this."
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I do find it. I found it a bit hard to finish. It was a bit boring
Had
to
it
me.
not been for the fact that I was doing this discussion craft thing with Majik with you, I would have
I
DNF'd
wouldn't
this
have
for a
finished
third
it.
time.
Yeah,
I'm on the verge of just decluttering this at the end of our discussion
nice.
because I don't know, it's been sitting on my shelf for I don't know since probably since 2017, 18. And I've started so many times, never gotten past the first few chapters. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, if I hadn't been for the fact that I was discussing it with you, I would have not finished it, I think.
I think the first two chapters have no exercise in them, and they're very like sort of setting up the lay of the land for the story that she's about to tell us. And then the third chapter, the what if, is where she starts giving you sort of prompts and stuff. And that's when I started being more interested in it. And then at some point, I was like, all right, this is going too far, and I don't want to do these. And now I'm just reading what to do on a thing I'm not doing.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Uh, but yeah, that's my thoughts on the very first glimmer. I really like the exercises, so if you can somehow get your hands on the exercises without having to buy the book, I would suggest doing it.
Yeah.
Uh, Maybe me and Molly can help. Nah, we're not gonna do that live on main. Buy the book, support an author, even though you shouldn't.
Even though we
Uh,
didn't like it that much.
yeah. Zainab says they mentally did the exercises.
Cool.
Next
This
project
is
reveal.
the mentally doing the exercises. I feel like I did that a lot with Save the Cat for some of my other projects that I wasn't working on, where I was thinking, "Ooh, that could be useful," and every now and then I would take some notes, but I wasn't doing everything. It was more like that one specific moment. I was like, "Oh, that's useful, and I should think about that for this character or this thing." So yeah,
Wendy says, I'd get it from the library, maybe pick out what helps you, because Lisa
yeah,
asked, so it has a few good parts, but not worth a purchase. I 100% agree with Wendy. Get this from the library, read it, and just take a note of everything you'd want to remember, and
yeah.
then give it back to the library, because
I would also argue if you're not doing a talk about it like we are, skip parts that you're finding boring. Just
start on
skip them.
chapter 3. You're missing nothing.
Yeah,
So yeah, I 100% agree with Wendy. Just borrow it from the library. I also, because when I use Save the Cat, I use Save the Cat a lot. So like I look up all the beats and I physically use it as like a work thing. I don't see myself looking up this and using it as a work thing.
no, yeah, same.
So yeah.
I yeah, I did that with the anatomy of a story. Is that what it is?
Yeah, this one, Anatomy of a Story.
This one. I also used that one quite a bit when I was first starting to write, and it's similar in a way that there's a lot of bits you can skip, but the parts that are useful, I generally had them as notes somewhere so I could refer back to them and be like, oh, that'll be useful for a future story. While Story Genius, I feel like once I've read it once and done the exercises once, I don't really want to do it again, you know?
I wrote down the questions just because I think they're a really good starting point, like
Yeah,
the what if questions.
yeah.
So I did that, but yeah, I probably won't be reading this again or looking it up like I do Save the Cat. Uh, Violet says, I'm flipping through my copy and it feels nostalgic. Yeah, that 2016 nostalgia.
Yeah.
Zainab says, I have to admit, I like the way Crone wrote. I found her writing entertaining to read. Um, I like the writing style of it. She's very like casual in the presentation, which I can enjoy. I feel like she's a bit milder than what Jessica Brody is, but at the same time, she's very much
Yeah.
harsher in the
Yeah.
language. Not to
Yeah, I
compare everything to Jessica Brody, but that's like my go-to go-to
it's
crossover.
not the writing style I disliked, it's her tone. Like,
Yeah,
you can have a good writing style and make it easy to flow, and I didn't mind that. I thought it was alright. It was just the tone itself of saying, "Do this, don't do that." Very
yeah,
prescriptive. That bothered me.
yep. 100% agree. And that was my thoughts on part one. Do you have anything to add
I'm
to
trying
that?
do I have anything else on part 1?
Yeah,
No, I think we covered it.
I don't know if I've explained like thoroughly, but part one was very much about the inner workings of the character.
Yeah.
Uh, nope, it was about the story and what it is and what it isn't. That's the one. Um,
She does talk about character in it as well, but mostly to say
yeah,
whose story it is and why she believes there's only ever one true main character, which I sort of agree. I think that might be one of the controversial ones where I think some people completely disagree when they have multiple POVs and they're like, all of them are my main characters. But I sort of agree with her that you usually have that one person you can feel has the most issues and the most to solve and the
yeah,
more
me
big
too.
character arc.
Yeah, yep. I 100% agree, and I think that's kind of the takeaway point from this part is that she just spends a lot of time talking about how everything you've done so far is wrong, and then she talks about what her story really is. Um, and I do agree with some of the points, but overall, I think she was very harsh in her tone.
Yeah.
And there are three parts. So, like, part one is what is the story and what isn't a story. Part two is the inner workings of a character, and then part three was like the plot bit, like
Mm,
how you can make the plot work around the characters. Nope, how you can make the characters work, how you can make the plot work for the characters, and not how you can make the characters work for the plot, or whatever. How to phrase that. So yeah, that was. I think she needs a cheat sheet for all the prompts. I agree. Yes, her casual tone. That was it, says Zainab. Thanks for the input, says Lisa. You're welcome. There will be a summa summarum at the end of the stream where we kind of just briefly go over our closing arguments. Is that what you call it in a court case?
yeah,
Uh,
sure.
yeah.
We're
Um,
judging this book and we're putting it through.
yeah. Lisa has requested a rat, which we are going to get into because I think I'm done with part one.
Fair.
Let's see. Let's present, share screen. Let's do this looks cozy. Spellbook timer. Let's do another 25
Oh yeah,
minutes.
I love that one too.
She's very cute. She's giving, I don't know, actually, if she's giving the art of summoning demons, but not really.
She's giving it more practical magic type of witchy vibes.
Yes. Oh, I still have to see that movie. Yeah, we're going to dive into a sprint. And then Lisa's got to get some work done before therapy. And then Lisa has not requested a rat. I am a rat requesting a sprint. Please do not give me rats.
Here's some rats
Cottage.
for you.
Here's some rats for you. 3, 2, 1, let's go. It always feels like a rave party with that ending.
It does. That felt like a long one. I don't know why. As in, like, I feel like I managed to get through a lot. Maybe it's because I didn't have to restart my router.
I don't know what to tell you, Marlon. It was 25 minutes. I think. I don't think I have it on any extra speed. Nope, it's on one time speed. So it's simply 25 minutes.
It felt like 35.
Well, I'm happy to give you this time hack. How did you do? What did you get done?
I got 650 words or so, I'd say. So I've reached 1,000 for the day because I had like 350 before. So yeah, feeling good about it.
Big slay, big slay. And
Have
I
you?
did. I'm trying to, because my goal is to finish Black Smoke Rising by the end of the month. So I'm trying to write or like plot story. I don't know how to tell it now. You've confused me, Lisa Cron. I'm trying to figure out what the back half of my novel is to be. Because right now I have just a bunch of setups and then nothing. Like I don't know the lesson they learn. I don't know the shard. I don't
Mm.
know. I don't know nothing.
And that's a big no in Lisa Cron's book. So you shouldn't have started writing at all if you didn't know that to start with. Really. Yeah.
That's on me.
What can I
I'm
say?
so sorry. I'm so sorry, Sleaza. Sleaza number two.
No, that's not the sleaze. We cannot call her sleaze. That feels like a crime.
Yeah, that feels like a hate crime. But
Blasphemy.
yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what the back half of my novel is and how I
Yeah.
can wrap it up before December 31st, basically.
Why before December 21st?
I want to get it done before the new year because my goal this year was to write a draft, and I thought it was going to be a fantasy draft, and it is going to be a fantasy draft just for a silly little cowboy book instead of this uh, big epic fantasy story that I had ingrained in my brain. Um, but it is what it is, what it isn't.
Fair.
Lisa says, "Ouch! Don't lump me in with her. Not a hate crime, definitely hateful though, which is fair enough."
I'm gonna try to give you the best vision I can give
Oh,
you.
look at the little popper. Oh my God, bless his cotton socks.
He is very muddy.
And then on the couch still.
It just drops off, like it dries quite quickly, and then it drops off him, and you can just literally vacuum it because it's velvet type of material. So
Ah,
it's
gotcha.
really, yeah. Sorry, I have to replug everything now. There we go. Just thought
It's
that
fair
was
enough.
worth
It was
showing
it
him.
was worth it. It was worth it. Let's see. Sam says, I must nap if I do not return when y'all do. I definitely catch the replay. I hope
Fair.
to see you in the replay. If you're here in the replay, hello, Sam, in the replay.
Yes.
Zainab says, have to admit, I don't know who my MC is for Project Orbit. I have 3 point of view characters, and I do have a favorite, lol, but I don't think that necessarily makes her my MC, question mark.
It usually
How
does.
do
Though.
you guys determine your MC? Well, Lisa Cron talks a little bit about this, Zainab, so let us ask you some control questions. So Lisa Cron describes it as even though a book have multiple point of views, uh, it is she talks about how like there is one central character and the other point of views kind of their story revolves around that central character. So if your
Yeah.
other 2 point of views evolve around this main girl which you have an affinity for, which is to me when I like particularly like a character in a
That's
like
usually
a
the
big
main
cast, I'm like,
character.
okay, you're the main project.
Yeah,
uh,
I think so too.
so
But it's mostly around who's your problem child, Zainab? Who is the worst and needs to learn the most, basically? Usually, I feel like that's what Lisa Cron seems to say. It's sort of like who's going to get the biggest character arc and the most important things to learn, the most important lesson throughout the book. And I feel like that kind of correlates with stuff from Save the Cat as well. So
yeah, like what's the biggest story basically.
yeah. And yeah, you're right. She says like the other POVs often sort of revolve around that main story and help that main story along. So if you
Yeah,
feel
just
like
in
you
terms
have that,
of like she talked about this book where there was like three Mexican, Spanish, something,
I don't
three
remember.
immigrants, and one of them had their story, and then the two others was just the main character's story told through another perspective. Is how she phrased it, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly. So like there was this main person, but then the two other women that the book also had point of views from, kind of was just, there to support that main point of view, in terms of we get perspective, we get insight into what the main perspective is thinking, but also when we're in the main perspective, we get an insight into the surroundings around her. So,
But I
if you're
feel like
from,
it's sometimes easier to see it if you're the reader than if you're the writer, like who the main character is.
definitely, I think it's one of them kill your darling moments where you just,
But Zainab, if you have beta readers that have read your story, they might be able to tell you and be like, "It's that person." I think, you know.
yeah, maybe, definitely. Perhaps
You,
a
who
chance.
would you say? I've not read it, therefore. How much do you remember of Six of Crows, and who would you say is? Because I know it's a multiple POV one, right?
I mean,
Is there like
the
a main
leader of the
character?
gang, Cass Brecker, is
Yeah.
definitely the main
Okay.
character, and the other points are there to kind of, you see his actions and his world through the other characters, but they each all have their fulfilled story and their own like
Yeah.
arc and stuff. But it's just
Yeah.
there wouldn't be a book if his point of view wasn't there.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. That's a good way to
That
see
makes
it.
sense.
It's sort of like,
Yeah,
yeah, basically ask yourself if there's a character who wasn't there, without them, would the story still exist? Would the plot still advance? Would there still be stuff going
yeah,
on?
yeah. Because at least in Six of Crows, I don't know. Did you say you'd read it or not? I don't
No, I
remember.
haven't, but I did
10 out of 10
read.
recommended. 10 out
I
of 10
did, I
recommended,
did read
Molly.
the analysis in Save the Cat now, so I know everything that happens. But I would still
Just
read it.
read it. It's a great book.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite. Like,
Mm,
do I dare say top
I
five books all
I
time?
wasn't going to read it initially because I was watching Shadow and Bones and all that, but now that
Nothing like the show.
it's in there, like they
It's
melt
in
these,
there,
yeah,
like
they
plot
mix
wise,
these
but the
stories.
vibes, not
Okay.
even remotely similar.
I do enjoy it. So I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to read it because I feel like I'm just going to enjoy the story from that side. But now that they've cancelled it and that they're not going to continue it, I'm like, I should read the books.
Honestly, one of the five, top three books for me. Six of
You're like,
Crows.
how many? What's the range? Top
What's the echelon?
nine, top
But
three.
it's definitely top three for me. Six of Crows. It
Nice.
is so good. One of my absolute faves. 10 out of 10
Okay.
recommends, and I do think you'd enjoy it because you like silly little fancy books. Um, but yeah, like if you can take away a point of view, Zainab, and your book still happens, then that's probably not the main point of view. Because that's the deal about Six of Crows. Like you can remove each of the other point of views, and the main story would still happen because it's
Yeah.
driven by this one character. So I don't know if that helps, but call in. I don't really agree. There's only ever one main character. I mean, you can have multiple main characters, but
There's
there's one
always
character I feel
one.
like your book wouldn't happen without. That's my take on it, anyway.
There's always a Buffy of the Scooby Gang. I feel like,
Yeah,
even though everyone in the Scooby Gang has their own arc and has their own storyline, and it's still really cool, and you can align yourself more with one person or another. At the end of the day, you have a Buffy. I feel like
I'm not really well versed in romance, so I can't comment on this. But I think,
it. I sort of disagree from the romances I have read, but also maybe I've just not read the same ones as you. Simply
yeah,
as
in
that.
a romance, I just think of like the couple as an entity. I don't know if that makes sense.
That's true because that's sort of how that author presents it in the Romancing the Beat book, and it's very much like you have one entity. However, I still think that there's a main character in most romances that I have read. There's always one person that you're like, well, it might be because you're a woman writing a woman and it's a straight couple and you're associating yourself more with a woman, but sometimes it feels that way. I don't know.
Yeah. Sam does make a good point though, both in romance novel, but in romance novels it wouldn't happen without both the MCs, and I think that's a fair point to make. But I always think of the couple as like an entity. So,
Yeah. I still think there's
um,
often one person who's learning more throughout the romance novel than the other person.
yeah, like has a bigger stake or a bigger scope, or like
Yeah.
the
A,
penniless
a bigger, like,
girl towards the big lord.
misbelief about love or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I do see your point, and I do understand. Yeah. Oh my god, I know who my main character is. Plot twist. It isn't my favorite character. Thank you so much. Those points were so helpful.
Nice. Wow. Come
Yeah.
here for solving things in your.
Yeah, not us giving actual advice, helping people. I don't
Oh,
know.
crazy.
Sam says, I think that opens the discussion for what a main character is. True. Because some main characters have flat arcs. I
Yeah,
think
but
that's
that's bad
fair.
writing. No?
Not necessarily. I think like James Bond, Sherlock Holmes, they don't really have. I mean, they have arcs,
Yeah.
but it's kind of flat. They're not here to learn a lesson outside of like the story, even though they have overarching points. I don't know.
But that could refer back to the whole you can have a what was it? You can have a shitty story but a good plot, or the other way around. You can have a
That's fair. That's fair. And I do feel like there's some
like
evolvement to
what
this.
is Anastasia's character arc in 50 Shades of Grey, you know? Is it that she learns to enjoy BDSM or I don't know. It's a bit flat.
Yeah, I agree with Sam on this one. Flat arcs don't equal bad writing. But that's the good thing about opinions. Some of us are right and some of us are wrong.
Yeah, I would change my word bad for boring, but that's also personal. I would probably find it more boring if it's a flat arc, is what I mean.
Yeah, I understand. What's that Joni Mitchell song? I see both sides now, or something. I look at things from both sides now. Is that one?
I don't know if you say so.
Yes, there was some love for Edgar, sweet boy. Um,
Sleepy boy.
Thank you for that. Such a stylish little boy on his fashionable couch. Truly, Edgar is living better than me. Lisa requires penance for that comparison to the author, though. Name your price, Lisa. Name your
Yeah,
price.
tell us what you want.
Kelly says, silly little cowboy book, he says, as if every time he's talked about it, everyone is like, give me more. I
True.
mean, it is a silly little cowboy book, and I think that's kind of what's helping me writing it because compared to this big fantasy epic or this big space opera that I had in my brain, it gets very overwhelming for just a simple little country boy like myself.
I feel like
Um,
there is I mean, I don't know if silly is the right word, but there is something about writing something that feels more light-hearted and just less pressure when you write it.
yeah, I don't know, it's lighthearted. It is definitely not lighthearted, but there's
Not in the sense, yeah, it is grim. I get it because you've got all the monsters and everything, but
yeah,
I don't know
but
what.
it just feels lower
Yeah.
stakes in terms of like
Yes. Yeah.
my personal journey. I don't know. But yeah, my still little cowboy book. I love her, love him. Uh, yes, the penance. And as we see, Sam didn't nap. um, and Violet had points. Speaking of your faves, fill out Lynn's year of favorite spreadsheet. No wrench, no link. Sad face. Yeah, I trust you enough to give you a wrench. Hold on, I'll give it to the next sprint.
And that was your first mistake.
Yeah, probably. Let's see. There was Lynn. Paddington Bear, for example, is the main character with a flat arc, but all the supporting characters around him have arcs because of him. Yeah, Paddington was just the first one to come to mind. Yeah, I agree.
I believe
He's
you.
not really. Yeah, he's not really there to learn a lesson.
I believe you. I don't know. I wouldn't know.
Yeah. Let's see. Lisa's penance is that I require that you all refer to the author simply as Cron. It's without an H, but otherwise you nailed it. However, if I can spell it, I shall be the only only Lisa, and definitely the only Lisa.
She's calling her Crohn disease at this point. That's what she's saying. She's like,
We are tearing this book apart. Speaking of tearing this book apart, we're going to dive into part two. Nope. Yes, that was correctly creating the inside story. And this is the part where she talks about the what if. Is that the question she asks all the time? What if? Let's see.
is
I
that
have
the is that the one you said started at page 144?
no. That's chapter
That's part 3. Yeah, sorry.
part three. Yes.
I don't know which parts are where. Yeah, it is. I think you're right. The
Yeah.
one
This
where we
is where
have the
she talks.
Western.
Well, we actually dived into a lot of this. This is where she's talking about all the what ifs. Like,
I think mostly I mixed in my head part 1 and 2 into one part. I just thought it was part 1 when we were putting
yeah,
it.
part one is just really shortly kind of the things that put me off earlier, but we
Yeah.
talked about some of it. Especially, particularly the glimmers we shared earlier was from part two, and also she asked some questions. The first pinprick is like, when did you first be inspired by the story? What made you be inspired? What made you be inspired? that is not proper grammar, but you get it. Question number two: why do I care? What is my point? And also drafting my what if. And those are the exercises we spoke of. But then she also has a point where she talks about a third rail, and I'm still confused about what the third rail. So I was hoping you could maybe enlighten me, Malin.
Absolutely not. I'm
Uh,
just
she
confused.
describes the third rail as, according to Cron, is the opposition between what your protagonist needs, their goal, and also the wound that is stopping them from attaining their goal, which I feel like is very similar to what Jessica Brody. Again, comparing this to Save the Cat, because it's the like my other craft book that I know like from back to back. It's very similar to what Jessica Brody. I think she calls it shard of glass or something.
Yeah, it's basically that misbelief. It's I don't know
Yeah,
why all of these methods, even Jessica Brody's, I always forget that it's called the shard of glass. I'm just like, just call it what you're describing it as, because that means it's a simpler way to call it that. Just say it's the fucking misbelief. Like, you don't need to call it
yeah,
something fancy to make your method sound different. But yeah.
yeah. So I feel like she's just like, oh, you shouldn't listen to other craft books, but I never ride with the third rail as a term name. I agree.
Yeah.
I don't understand what is the two first rails. Is one
She
of them a
uses
character?
it a lot in her index cards later on, where you have like the little index cards. I feel like I remember seeing, that was a big part of it.
Yeah,
Um,
that's for the next part, from
yeah.
the story part. But yeah, the character part, she definitely she talks about third rail. Yeah, and I don't really understand what she's talking about, which is not the sign of a good craft book. I don't know. I feel like. And she also had an example that I want to talk about, where I was like, okay, this is just I don't know what she's on here. But in chapter four, page 58. I don't know if you've taken any notes from it. Let's see,
Um,
58, 58, 58. She had an example of how to craft a story. This is in relations to finding your protagonist, where she says like how you find your protagonist. And she has an example here of a female main character. And she describes this as like she's never owned a pair of high heels. She eschews makeup, and she's like hates jewelry, and all these just typically feminine things. And she uses them as like a good example of what she just uses them as a example of
yeah.
of what to do. Let's see. She never owned a pair of high heels. Did you ever try to run in a pair of high heels? She eschews makeup, make her feel claustrophobic, frills, what, and take a chance of them flopping into the petri dish, and jewelry. What's the point of it again? And I was just like, this is so ingrained in like internalized misogyny. I feel like
This is still 2000s.
it is very much the pick me girl of like wearing your Converse to prom.
This is the main character of Hush Hush and all of these other fake Twilight books.
Oh, I never got into anything other than Twilight, but it's just I don't know. It felt so dated, and I know
Yeah.
it's from 2016, so it is dated already. But I was just like, who? I don't know. It was not a good example,
Yeah.
and that was kind of just. I was like, "Oof, this is rough to read."
I think I didn't take any notes about that. I think I just mostly skipped over some of that bit. I'm not gonna lie, probably because I was rereading that part. Um,
Yeah, I mean, this is the part kind of to what Zainab was talking about, where she talks about finding your main character, finding your character, and
yeah,
writing the. You should call it a thumbnail picture. Like before you kind of solidify who they are, you just have an idea of what your story of like.
I did really enjoy the example that she uses in there, like the friend example. The one who's writing her book as you're reading through.
Yeah, yeah,
And I thought the way she was taking it on, and I enjoyed both the example in general, like how she was working it through, especially at the beginning, but also the parts where she was getting it wrong or not answering the question correctly enough. And then Lisa Cron was like, get it, like go further, ask yourself why this and why that. I enjoyed seeing that worked into the book because it felt very realistic, and it helped me think, okay, you don't get it right from the start, and that's okay, and you get to rework this and look at it over again and all that. So I enjoyed that part.
yeah. It was just I don't know. The story they come up with for the friend is boring, though. I don't know. I kind of liked it. I would
I
have watched
didn't think it was
this.
boring. I just thought it was contemporary like type of story that is absolutely not for me. Like it's very Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine, and those types of books, which I've tried to read, and they're just not for me. But I didn't think it was boring. It was just different.
Yeah, and I thought it really using her friend's novel, like beginning of a novel as an example, I thought she really nailed it in terms of like talking about a topic and then showing how her friend solved it or how she pushed her
Yeah,
friend to solve it. So I thought that was one of the better aspects of the novel, actually,
yeah,
and also didn't hate the story. Uh,
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of hate for the story. The story was dumb.
I didn't think it was something I would read. So I would agree if I picked it up as a book and I had tried to read it as a book, I would have said that's dumb, probably. However, as an example, it was useful, and it still allowed me to see the inner workings of the process. So that's why I didn't mind it.
Yeah, it was bad. I don't know. I didn't mind it, but I also didn't pay that much attention to it because at some point I was just like, okay, I'm not reading this to learn anything. I'm just reading it because I'm talking about it, with Malin. Uh,
Yeah,
so
same.
yeah, so there's probably a lot of gems that I didn't pick up.
Yeah,
Let's see. Killy says third rail sounds like someone is just trying to say treason. Let's be honest. Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I was getting to.
yeah.
It was something for sure.
I
Um,
think, yeah, in that part as well, a lot of my notes are I've got a note that's basically saying page 126 to page 129, 29. One long ass chapter to say nothing. That's my note. Basically, there's a lot of moments that felt so damn long to say the exact same thing over and over again and repetitively. And I was just like, you're just trying to fill up this book now, which is basically a worksheet. And you could just have a worksheet and we don't need a whole book about it, basically. It felt a bit like that at times.
yeah, as Violet says, it took up so much of the book, it tainted the whole thing for me. I liked it for the character stuff. Like I thought that was really helpful. But then later in the book, when she talks about plot and there's like pages upon
I, sk-
pages from
I
her
skipped the
friend's novel,
endings.
I
Yeah.
was just like, yeah, I understood what you're saying. I'm just gonna skip this part that
When
illustrates.
we got to the index cards bit, I stopped reading the examples, I think, around after the origin story and the ending. So I read the origin story, the ending, and then a couple more. And I think after that, I stopped reading the example that she was giving with a friend. Yeah.
Yeah, but only because it was taking like 3, 4, 5 pages of
Yeah.
example.
And I was like, I'll never finish this book if I continue.
No, yeah, no, I agree. It took up too much of the book. I don't know if it tainted the whole thing for me, but it definitely made me finish it faster because you could just skip big chunks of the book. I'd
Yeah.
say for the last part, like 1/3 of it is just the examples, and like 2/3 is just her explaining examples. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sam says I dislike that as a solo example, to the female protagonist that I was talking about,
Yeah.
without any like discussion on it. Because I agree, it sounds internalized misogyny. There wasn't any discussion. She was just like
Clearly
asking what.
example. Yeah.
Yeah, she was coming up with a setting like, what if the internet went down or something? That was the setting, and then like, what character would live in this world? And she had this lady who worked in the lab, and she didn't wear heels, she didn't wear makeup, she hated jewelry, she hated frills, because they were so impractical for her doing science. And then she never touched on it again after that.
Yeah.
She went on to talk about like, and then this lady had a neighbor, and he's in his basement, and he has this online community, and like, what would it look like if the internet disappeared for him? And I was just like, yeah, I don't know. It was not it for me. I'm not gonna lie.
It was a bit random. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of the vibe I was getting. But yeah, third rail, none the wiser. It's like the cross section between story and character. I think what is she's trying to say. But I was none the wiser, and I keep seeing this thrown around in articles because I went online looking up like, what is the third rail? What does Lisa Cron mean by the third rail?
Yeah, I've seen that word thrown around a lot before, so it didn't feel like the first time I saw it, but I still don't know what it is.
Yeah, and I think if you're writing well, at least if I'm reading, Jesus Christ, if I'm reading a craft book, I want it to be on the level of Save the Cat, where it's just like, very easy, concrete, applicable. I love
Yeah.
applicable writing advice, and this did not feel applicable to me,
It
especially when
it's
we dive
so
into the scene
weird.
cards.
It's very weird to read a craft book that doesn't feel applicable and that isn't said in a manner that makes you understand, oh, okay, this is what that means, that's how I apply it, because then you almost feel like the person telling you what to do is being condescending and you're being an idiot. And that's not how a craft book should ever feel, because that's
Yeah.
literally why you bought the craft book, is to learn, not to feel like an idiot. So yeah.
Synab says, so basically the third rail is the character internal conflict. That's who I interpreted it. That's how I interpreted it. Um, that makes sense, but let's see. Yeah, because she speaks about the opposition between your protagonist's needs, the goal, and the wound that is stopping them from
Mm.
attaining their goal. So maybe that could be the character's internal conflict, but why not just use that word? I know that you want
Yeah.
to figure out, like, come up with new lingo for your craft book, but I feel like internal conflict is such like a big statement, like a big state piece. Nope.
Yeah.
Like it's so ingrained in like
You
writers kind of.
like she literally could just call it internal conflict then. And I don't
Yeah,
know why she did it.
yeah, me neither. But I guess she's selling a hot shit ton of books, so
Yeah.
someone does probably like this. Just I don't know. I didn't get the third rail aspect, and I think you, Zainab, just explained it to me so much easier than what this book did. Just internal conflict. So thank you for that.
Which is like, surely when you buy a craft book, it should be explained that easily.
Yeah, let's see. Anna says, I'm hopping into this discussion very late, sorry, but I think I prefer shot of glass as a term for this. Yeah, I prefer internal conflict because that's what it is.
Of course. I was
Violet,
trying to find notes about the third rail, but I don't even think I had
I
that
tried
note.
looking it up at the back to figure out like where she mentions third rail, but she has not put it in the little index bit, so I couldn't.
So she does have like the Jenny example, the friend story, and then at the end of it, I had highlighted the struggle between wanting deep connection and feeling that the price is too high. That's what that specific character's third rail is. So it's basically, it is the internal conflict, is the struggle between what the character wants and the misbelief that is making them not getting what they want.
Okay, I get it now, but it took me 3 attempts and 3 people to explain to me what this expression meant. And I even Googled this when I was like, I don't understand what this is. Let me look this up. But people just quoted like the exact wording that she had, so I was none the wiser. While it says first rail is the want, second rail is the need, and third rail is where they meet. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, but I still don't like. I don't know why
But
does.
again, it's yet another way to explain it that makes more sense than what she put in the book, which is like,
Yeah.
why is it
Uh,
that hard?
Yeah, a lot of it I felt like when I was reading it was very wishy-washy.
Mm. And I think
Uh,
it comes back to the whole paraphrasing thing, where I felt like a lot of chapters were really long for no fucking reason. Uh, yeah, there was another chapter as well where I think I wrote down, you're literally just saying the same thing over and over again. Yeah, I wrote about page 172, so I think it's in part 3, but it doesn't matter what it was about. It was just yet another chapter where I was like, get to the point. And she was basically saying, you've got a scene that is called Put the Reader in the Midst of the Event. And then literally right after you have one called Let Us Be Inside the Protagonist. And then one page later, another called What Will Change for Your Protagonist Internally. And all 3 said the same thing. And it was like, you
yeah,
don't need 3 different titled passages to say the same thing.
yeah, yeah. I agree. That's also one of
Yeah.
the. I especially noticed it when she went from the what if questions and into like the protagonist stuff. She's
Yeah.
just giving example after example after example that's just similar,
Yeah.
and like I don't know,
Yeah.
it was just very much regurgitating the same thing. Uh, we have a honey jar from Kelly. I don't know what this honey jar does, but here's some honey for anyone who wants it.
I
This
think the honey jar is meant to be filled by bees, and because that's a request for the bee timer, potentially, it might be.
okay, because I will not subscribe to this notion of bees replacing rats as sprint requests, just as we are abundantly clear.
Because you can't
This
do this while Violet is in the chat. It's just not allowed.
no. A disrespect to what I consider to be one of the institutions of AuthorTube,
The rat queen is
the Rat
literally
Queen.
there.
Yeah. Well, it's a request for the B timer, and that I can fulfill.
Cool.
But yeah, unless you have any more, I think because we talked a little bit about it in the past section and this section about the character stuff. So unless you have anything else, I think we're just going to dive into a B timer, maybe.
Yeah, no, I think I'm scrolling down my notes just to see if I had any good stuff as well about that part.
I mean, I like the parts where you're just like, this doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's a lot of my notes that were in the good parts were more useful, as in like the what to do bits, basically.
Yeah, which is kind of a highlight for the book for me. We're going to dive into it in our like little summary. Uh, but that was like my favorite part was like the first 50 pages, 60 pages maybe, when she talked about all the like the character internally stuff and
Yeah.
you know the what if questions. And then after that, I was just like, this is so long.
I'd say I'd give the first half of the book probably has a, and you can actually see it in my tabs. Um, the first half of the book has more pink stickers, which were useful stuff that I thought were interesting, and the yellow ones were stuff I found annoying or boring or upset me. so so I
Yeah,
have more pink in the first half.
I didn't do tabs. I just had like a big document where I
Yeah.
wrote down my notes and thoughts. And I think like
Yeah. Page.
70, 80% of it is maybe part one
Yeah.
and part two, and then like 5%. That's not math. Yeah, and then I mean, main part of my notes are in the first two chapters or first two parts because I just didn't really vibe with the last one.
Yeah.
Uh,
Technically, I think basically after the origin scene and like the details about how to work out the origin scene is when it like started going under for me.
yeah. Yes, this is not about requesting the B timer because I will allow that, but I think someone said that the bees were the new rats in terms of summoning a sprint, and I just will not stand by that. But I will stand by supporting Violet on her channel. How many minutes do we want to do? Let's
However
put
many you want.
20 on the clock.
Sounds good.
Let's see, 20 on the clock, or 20:06. So yeah, when we come back, we're going to talk about the last part, and then we're going to dive into the conclusion, and then that's the sprint. So this is the last sprint of the day. Get your words in. I had a banner somewhere to put this in. There you go, sprints. There you go. Two
You're
thirds.
very prepared.
I am very prepared, but today I just felt like it's a lot of like
I was literally saying you are prepared though, because I don't have any of my banners ready at the
oh.
moment to start a stream.
Well, they're all in there, so. But yeah, we're gonna dive into a 20-minute sprint. That's gonna be the last one of the day. Nope, second. Yeah, is this?
Yeah,
Yeah, this is the third one. This is the
yeah,
wrong
it is.
banner. There you go. It's gonna be the last sprint of the day, and then we come back. We're gonna wrap this up. So 3, 2, 1, let's go. Welcome back. Don't look
I
at that.
love, I love the music at the end of that one.
Very much a vibe.
Yeah.
We had a Mon Ami drop in. Bonjour Paris. Ça va? I know Paris is British, but whatever.
Which is very funny because you don't do that to me, who's actually a French speaker, but I do live in London.
I say bonjour to you all the time.
I think you always say it to Paris. I don't think you say it to me usually.
I feel like I always say bonjour to you. Bonjour.
Maybe.
And then ça va? And then you answer something and I have no idea what you're saying. So I'm like, oh, sure.
And then you usually just throw in a few boulangerie left and right,
Ugh.
just for
Eiffel
reasons.
Tower, just in a French accent. Yeah, solid. We also had a Katie join. Hello, hello, hello. How did you do for that sprint, Miss Malin?
I think I got about 300, 350 words or so. I didn't really check where I was at before, but yeah, that seems about right. So yeah.
Amazing, amazing. I got actually some outlining done. I'm now done with the Bad Guys Close In. I need to figure out how to move into Act 3, though. So that's going to be for another time, uh, another sorrow.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
find
about
that
it.
the big moments sometimes confuse me because I sometimes try to stick too hard to maybe something like Save the Cat, and I'm just like, but in Save the Cat they say that you change world between Act 1 and 2, and then you change world again between Act 2 and 3, and I'm technically changing world in my midpoint, which is in the middle of Act 2. What does it mean?
Uh, I mean, yeah, in terms of that, like Act 1 is taking place in this like fictional Western town, and then Act 2 is like the travel to a place, and then Act 3 is the place. So I
Yeah,
guess I'm nailing it in that term, but I just need to figure out the logistics of the like actually what happens. And
yeah.
then whenever I'm done with this draft, I can mold it into something that's actually a story according to the scripture of Cron.
The scripture of God.
Yeah, I don't know what to call it. Kelly says tidied and art sparkle emoji.
Nice.
Katie threw in a squealer line boulangerie.
Boulangerie.
Boulangerie. And then Zainab finished reviewing a chapter from my exam.
Good job.
And then Katie and Rice ate some food and watched a video. Very, very pleased with that. Let's see. We're gonna wrap up the story of geniuses where and talk about the Midwendy think midpoint is a good place for a big twist. Indeed it is. What is my midpoint? Yeah, that is a big twist. Um,
I do like a big twist, but legit my midpoint in this story is an actual change of world. Like she literally just stops living where she lives and goes to live somewhere else and like is thrown into a different world. But also everything has been preparing her for that. And it just I'm like, am I gonna need to review that based on Save the Cat, or does it not matter that much? Yeah.
I think I quote Captain Barbosa all the time, but they're more like guidelines than actual
Guidelines.
rules. So yeah, I think for me, Save the Cat is a good starting point, and then whatever the story requires, I try to give it that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it makes terms it makes sense in terms of creating commercial fiction to
Yeah.
follow Save the Cat because it just makes it so easy. And there's a lot of people complain about the rigidity, and I think Lisa Cron says that too, like the rigidity of having a outline and like scene cards and all that, which is kind of ironic, which we're going to dive into in a moment. Um, but I think like there's so much freedom within that rigidity that I don't know. I've never felt trapped in the Save the Cat. It never felt like a recipe to me. It just
Yeah.
helps me kind of steer the story.
Yeah.
But this is not a conversation about Save the Cat. This is a
No.
conversation about Miss Cron and her story genius. And we're going to dive into the last part of the novel, which she has titled "Creating an External Gauntlet to Spur Your Protagonist's Internal Struggle." Phew, that's a mouthful. And we talked about this. Well, you actually mentioned it briefly in the beginning, how she throws away scene cards and how she like throws away any models, and then lo and behold, she has not one scene card in this novel, but she has multiple scene cards in this novel, and this is one filled out by her friend
My
from the story she did.
literally, I think it's on page 149 that I tagged something where I got annoyed at her shit talking scene cards. So it's like at the very beginning of that section, I think. Yeah, she goes like, I'm betting you've heard of index card type models before. There's many versions out there, blah blah. And she goes like, that method is deeply flawed because she talks about cause and effect, and she's basically like, because everything derives from the previous stuff that you've worked on, you can't just move around scene cards like that. But then, and she adds on, there's another passage where she goes like, you have to write everything chronologically, and then she's literally like, here's how you should write your book. Start with your origin story, the origin scene, the beginning scene, and then the end scene. And I'm like, how the fuck is that chronological? What are you talking about? Make it make
Yeah,
sense.
she talks about those. What do you call it? Bookends? Is that how she refers to it?
Yeah.
And I was just like, you just said that I should write this from A to B, or A to Z rather, and now you just, I don't know.
And
She contradicts herself, which we talked about earlier in the stream. But yeah, also I just didn't really vibe with the scene card. I don't know if it shows up on
yeah,
print, but
same. I was like, I don't want to fill that in because it felt like so much work. And I think that's my main issue with it is when I write a scene card, I will go with these. I will go with these
oh,
little
the same ones
cards.
I have.
You
Pretty
know,
much.
like just fill in some words in about, I think pretty much this happens to this character or whatever. And that's it. Like I'm not gonna go deeper into detail because the point is to figure out where what goes. And her
Yeah.
cards are like, I get the point of it, but that's so much detail and so much effort that I'm like, if I do all this, I will be bored to death in writing my own story and I will not want to write it.
Yeah. The only talking point I have for part three is the cause and effect blueprint, which is the scene card we talked about. And she
Yeah.
describes this as like having the bookends, so writing the origin scene and the first scene and then the last scene, and then you know where you're going, you know where you start, which contradicts her earlier statement of writing chronologically. But that's not
Yeah.
what we're here, neither here nor there. But I also feel like writers very much are already living by the cause and effect blueprint. Like, you know, a first scene happen, and then you have the second scene, and then you have the third scene, and even beats, which he like throws under the bus extensively in the first chapters. Even like save the cat. She doesn't say save the cat, but like that's I'm reading
We
save
know
the
that's
cat.
what she's talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, even like that has the cause and effect blueprint that she's talking about.
Yeah.
Like you have the inciting incident, and then you have like the debate, and then you have like the break into
That's
two, and it's just
literally, it was one of the main thing that irked me is that when she disses something, she disses it for the wrong reason. And it's like, you didn't understand the model that you're dissing. You could just say, I don't think that works because of this, and I prefer this method. But the way she's talking about it is like she will go, oh, those methods don't work because of that, and I'm like, but they don't do that. That's wrong. I think I literally wrote. There's a point where she's talking again about the card system and talking about the one in Save the Cat, like page 187 or something. And she goes, when does the first act end, etc. Like that's a bad thing to prepare in advance when you're going to have the end of your first act, when you're going to have the end of your second, etc., and to know the percentage of things. She's like, oh, card systems don't work because you can't prepare in advance how many scenes you're going to have for this specific moment. You can't know that in advance, so they don't work. And I'm like, but that's not what these systems are telling you to do. None of them are prescriptive about how many cards you need for your first act or your second or your midpoint. None of them are telling you you're going to need 3 cards. They're literally just like, that's a multi-beat scene, and that's a multi-scene beat, and that's a one-beat scene. That's it. Like
well, she does give an example of how many scenes to have in certain beats, though.
in Save the Cat.
Yeah, there's like
I,
this. Let me see if I can pull it up.
I feel like she was
Save
literally like,
the
you should
cat.
have more than one, but she usually just calls them
She does that for.
multi-scenes.
She does that for. Oh my God, what's the one we read? Writes a YA novel. Let me see. Open
She
image
does
new tab.
percentage, which I'm cool with because that's fine. You should know whereabouts in your book you should have that point, but a percentage doesn't tell you how many scenes you need for it.
Yeah, but she has this card. This is from for the first Save the Cat beat
Yeah, but
sheet.
there she says herself in the book they're not prescriptive in the number. She says that
Yes,
means
she does say
multiple.
that. She does say that.
She's literally
So
like, this means that will be multiple scenes, and that one will be one scene. That's it.
yeah, yeah,
But the,
I agree. There's a lot of unnecessary hatred from Miss Cron.
it's just like bad arguments, and I'm like, I would understand better if they were correct arguments, basically.
I agree with, was it Wendy or was it Lynn that said that her point of the novel should be this is how you write character driven stories and
Yeah,
not everything you know is shit. Everything you've been doing so far is shit. Your first draft is shit, and this is how you fix it. Uh, so yeah, I think because she just spends a lot of time putting other stuff down and then goes into her own spiels.
yeah, and it's
I
unnecessary because there's some good stuff in there. We both agree that there are some stuff in there we found useful. She's just talking about it wrong.
yeah, I made some notes that I'm gonna go
Yeah,
over at the end about like bits I found useful and bits I found not so useful. But yeah,
yeah.
and then I have some more questions. Malin, what was your favorite part of the book?
Ooh, favorite part of the book was for me the figuring out why you care, why it matters, all of these questions at the very beginning. I think I sort of said that at the beginning of our stream, but yeah, to reiterate, this very much was an aha moment for me to figure out some of the reasons why I write and why I enjoy writing the stories that I write. So I appreciated that because it made me think about the craft in a different manner than some of these other method books that are very much like do this, then do that, then do this, and you'll get the formula. I like that it was a little bit more psychological at the beginning and a little bit more like, why do you want to write this? So yeah,
100% agree. That was also my favorite bit. The whole like the what if system, like figuring out your story and like why you care about your story. I think that was really helpful, and I probably will do that for future stories too.
yeah.
Um, so that was one of my favorite bits. We've talked about it in extensively, but what was your least favorite part of the book?
Do you know what? I'm gonna throw in a new one. I I didn't like how she used famous authors' quotes to make her point that were not very out of context. There's like
Yes.
there's a quote at some point from Harlan Coben towards the end, and she goes how he basically said something about how when you write in a spiral you have to go back to the beginning to edit your book. So like he basically every 75 pages or so goes back to the beginning and edits his book again because now
Oh.
he knows further of where he's going or something. And she was trying to make her point about how you need to know where you're going at all times, and I was like, but you don't know that's what he meant. Like it was just so out of context and it was so trying to prove her point. And she does this several times. She does it again with a quote by Joyce Carol Oates at some point where she said, I'd never sit down and start writing. Like, that would be like getting in a car with no idea where you're going. No serious writer would write like that. And it's so out of context. It's just very much like, see, I'm right. And it irked me. I'm going to say that's my least favorite.
That's a good point. My least favorite bit is like how she kind of negatively tears apart the other like she tears apart plotting, pensing, like having a structure, not having a
Yeah.
structure, and particularly the stuff about like how you shouldn't have a shitty first draft. Uh, like that also just not my favorite part. So that was my least favorite part.
Yeah.
Let's see. There's some love for Barboza.
Yes.
Katie says, once you understand the rules, you can break them. Yep.
Which literally we learn in design. It's like, the Wired magazine is hailed as one of the best design pieces of work in, magazines, layouts and everything, because they break the grid all the time. And what you learn in school is like, follow the grid, follow the rules. And the reason why Wired has had so many prizes and stuff about the design is because it breaks it. So, yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
Uh, but I think you also should know what you're breaking and why you're breaking it.
Yes, agreed. Bless you.
Thank you. Let's see. Wendy says, I remember thinking that too, that she didn't really understand the method she was rejecting.
Mm.
Zainab says, I remember she used the headlights quotes as well. That's the quote that resonated with me. There was one she did that I kind of resonated with, but I thought was out of context for what it was written in. There's This is why she's talking about why should you care? Like, why do I care about my story? And she just threw in this random quote that I really liked, but it had no context, like before, after. And that was a quote by English writer Samuel Johnson. And he said, well, she quoted, "The two most engaging powers of an author is to make new things familiar and familiar things new," which I really think is a good quote. But in the
Yeah.
context of what she was saying, I was just like, this is just a quote in the middle of two other things.
Yeah.
Uh, so she does
Yeah.
that too a lot. She uses quotes to her advantage and kind of not looking at the context of them.
Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
and the places where I wanted quotes, like with all the sciencey stuff that she pulled in the beginning of the novel, is just a lot of like, yeah, we are wired to, we are evolved to, biologically we blank. I'm just like, this is just you saying things. Like this
It's
does not feel
literally,
sciencey.
you know, like if when you read, I don't know, an article that tries to prove a point and then it's got like a graph in it, and very often it's cut between a date and another, you can have like a dip in that graph and be like, oh yeah, therefore this is going down. And then if you were to see the dates before and the dates after, actually it's mostly going up, and you just zoomed in on that one part that's going down. And I feel like that's what she's doing with these quotes, is like taking it out of context and working it to her advantage without any proper justification. I don't know.
Yeah, 100% agree. Um, let's see. The next question is, have you used Story Genius in your own writing, and will you be doing it in the future? We kind of diffed on this both, but I just want to kind of summarize it.
Yeah.
I think as I said, I will be using the first stuff, the kind of finding out why you care about your story. I thought that was really helpful. The rest of it, like the scene card, just does not work for me.
Agreed. And pretty much the same. The scene cards, I think I really dropped off reading a lot of the examples, even from the story she was giving at the same time. But the first part, and I think I was writing notes to try and use it at a later point. And I think the point where I was like, that's still useful is maybe up until the opening of your novel, which is like chapter 9. And then she goes into the aha moment, your story's end. And I felt like the way she described these two chapters was quite useful. I was like, I could still use this. And then after that, I don't have any more notes at all, because that was the point where I was like, yeah, the rest I don't actually want to use.
It's fair enough. Um, who do you think this book is for?
I feel like it is a good method to use if one, you're more character driven than plot driven, because I feel like Save the Cat is maybe a little bit more plot driven. I might be wrong, and
I
some
agree
people
with you.
don't. But I feel like if your story is going to be more character driven, that might be a good method to try and stick to. And it's any book is good, any craft book is good to read if you don't know what you're doing and you want to know what you're doing. That's, to be fair. I don't think there's a
Yeah,
limit.
and I agree. I think this one very much is for the character people out there who likes to write stories that don't really that are more character driven. I think any story should be character driven, and Cron also says this. But my like, yeah, I think this would be a good book for anyone looking to figure out character, like what a character driven novel means. I think this is a good starting
Yeah,
point for that.
Violet's right. It's a good idea if you're like, I actually want help with more character-driven stuff, then
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, if you're a plot driven and need help with characters, which is kind of what I am, but I still felt like this was, I don't know. My main gripe is that it's a as any craft book, but particularly this one I felt it has some good insight, but there's just a lot of prescriptions and a lot of like nonsense in it.
Yeah.
So I think if you're willing to wade through these, is it 300 something pages, 280 pages, to find like 5 gems, then go for it. But if not, you can probably find this summarized in an article somewhere, and it'd be much easier.
I think also, I don't regret reading it as much as we've bashed it a little bit.
A little bit.
A
No,
little
I
bit.
don't. I mean, I never regret reading craft book, but I think there's to me a different level of uh, like takeaway, and I got a little bit of takeaway from this, but
Oh,
there's also not a lot of takeaway.
Zainab's comment is interesting because, yeah, I was thinking like, if you're new to the craft, maybe reading craft books in general is a good idea, but maybe not that one then.
Yeah, I agree with. Well, Zainab says, when I was new to writing, Story Genius was one of the first craft books I read. So to write my learning journey, I had to unlearn some stuff I learned. So in my opinion, probably not for newer writers. I think it's a good
Yeah.
book to read once you've got a solid foundation of what writing method works for you and what doesn't. So I think Violet really nailed it. This is a book if you already know a lot about uh, like writing as a craft, and if you are plot driven and looking for help with characters, this is really
And
for you.
I would add that it doesn't feel beginner friendly. Like the way it's written,
No, I
it's
think
good.
this.
It's a good writing style, but it doesn't feel very beginner friendly.
Yeah, because this was one. This was actually the first craft book I ever bought, and then tried to read it multiple times, and didn't really vibe with it. So I put it down and bought Save the Cat, and that really spoke to me more as kind of a
Yeah.
logical thinker? Question mark.
And
I don't know.
I would almost say like reading Save the Cat uh, by Jessica Brody, that version, not the screenplay version, is a good first starting book because she writes it in a very beginner friendly manner. And then once you've read that one, you can also make yourself more of an opinion on books like this one because there's so many references to books like Save the Cat in this one that you almost feel like you're reading the sequel to a book
Required
you
reading.
haven't read yet.
Required reading. Yeah. But yeah, I think for me this is nail on the head. If you're a
Yeah.
plot driven writer and looking for some help with characters, this is a really good book. But if you're a beginner, this is not very. What's that quote? It's intermediate. Or no? What's that TikTok? That's a TikTok sound something, but
Yeah, I know the one
it's
you mean, and I don't
intermediate.
know.
But I'm a beginner. I don't remember the
I thought
quote.
this was an intermediate class. Oh, this is a beginner class.
Yeah, but this is,
Sorry.
feels like an intermediate writing book,
Yeah.
and not a starter friendly writing book like Save the Cat is. And I think that's probably it.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing words? Any closing statements? Any?
No, I think I've literally gone through all of my annoyed comments.
Yeah, Violet says it. I learned a
Yeah.
lot from this, but I had a lot of the same issues as you two had with
I
it.
agree with that comment in the sense that I still feel the reason I said I don't have regrets reading it is because I still feel like I learned some bits from it. And I wouldn't, I mean, there's still some stuff that I'm happy I have learned about, even if I'm not going to use it for myself, because then I know about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think this one definitely is for someone who kind of knows the writing habits? Question mark. I don't know. I'm not going to harp on this again. Thank you so much for coming to this little soiree about Story Genius by Lisa Cron. Um, it has been another craft book. This was actually the craft book for November, but because of Nano, I decided to not throw a craft book stream.
That was a very valid reason.
Yeah, so I'm gonna read a new craft book for January. Violet's asking what's next. I don't know. I also haven't booked
Have you
any
read
guests.
Romancing the Beat?
I have not.
Because it's very small. So if you want to give an easier one a shot.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Um,
Um, but yeah, maybe I should read Romancing the Beat. I also have one called Take Off Your Pants, which is like a pantser plotter kind of situation book. Oh, she is skinny.
yeah,
Also red though.
yeah,
So yeah, maybe I'll read her for February because that makes sense.
yeah. I would
Uh,
actually.
but yeah. Uh, let's see. Oh my god, I've been meaning to read Romancing the Beat. Ooh,
For
Romancing the
short.
Beat's the only craft book I've read. Maybe I should do Romancing the Beat for January. I don't know. The jury's still out, Violet. If you have a particular book that you wanna see discussed live on main,
Yeah,
hit me
because
up.
I feel
I'm
like
open to suggestions.
I don't even know what's out there anymore. I feel like we've talked about all the famous ones, and I'm like, what else is famous in the craft book
There's more than
world?
two famous writing books, I feel like.
Yeah, that one, Save the Cat.
I mean,
I
on
would,
writing, pretty famous.
yeah, The Anatomy of a Story. I had heard a lot about before I read it, and
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's yeah,
Maybe Romancing the Beat, but that feels like a February book though, because
because
romance
yeah,
February. That makes sense. So if you have a craft book that you want to see discussed, call in. I'm open for suggestions. I have a few, but I'm also willing to buy whatever because I love spending money. Zainab says, "This was such a fun discussion. Thank you so much for torturing us yourselves for this. LOL." On writing, Zen in the Art of Writing, although they feel kind of memoiry. Yeah. Also, Grape is read on writing, and she has thoughts on it that I think is funny. And so I don't know if I want to read that. But yeah, if you want to see a craft book discussed here, hit me up. I'm open for anything. You can be a guest if you want. You can also not be a guest. I will hunt down someone to be a guest no matter what. Thank you so much for joining me, Malin, and thank you so much for subduing yourself to this
And
craft book.
thank you for having me. It was fun, despite how long it took me to read it.
Yeah, the psychology workbook for writers is a good quick one. Oh,
Okay,
that's fun.
that does sound interesting.
There's some. I'll just star these comments so I can actually come back to them. Let's see, romancing the beat.
Grape literally, and bye.
And out. Bye. On writing, there you go. I've started some comments. Yep, that's it for today. We're gonna close out with a great goodbye. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for joining me again, Malin. This has been another craft discussion, and I think we've said basically everything that's to be said about this at this point.
Yep.
So, peace.
Bye,
Let me
guys.
just find a timer. There you go.
Yeah.